Alright, it's time to try out PlayStation 5's new 10.0 beta, where the main headline feature of this upcoming firmware is personalized 3D audio profiles. Because I'm sure a lot of you might remember from 4 years ago, before PS5 came out, this was a core pillar of the console where Sony was heavily marketing this, talking about how much they were investing into advancing audio on PlayStation 5 with the Tempest 3D audio tech engine, also explaining to people during the Road to PS5 GDC discussion where, you know, people hear and interpret sound differently from one another, so you really have to have a more tailored audio experience to get the most mileage out of 3D audio, and, you know, that's cool, but it's been 4 years, and we've still only ever had 5 basic audio presets in PlayStation 5 settings. I'm sure a lot of you probably already picked one where it's a matter of choosing the sound that sounds the most level to you, and that's basically it. I'm sure that does cover a lot of folks, but now with the 10.0 beta, you can run through the setup wizard that's a lot more thorough for a more personalized 3D audio profile. And it really is a lot more thorough, so it does take about 5 to 10 minutes. There's these like 7 levels that you go through. The basic setup is this demonstration where there's obviously somebody on screen. It's got a big 360 view around you where you can move a cursor around, and there's 2 basic ways they do this, right? They'll play one singular sound bite from a certain direction, move the cursor around, select where you think it's coming from, and then there's another one where you hear sound from one direction that is basically like a swooshing sound. It goes from left to right, right to left, and you choose the, not necessarily the direction, that's obvious, but just the sound level, right? Where you think directionally it's coming from. Is it like very level from left to right, or is there a slight angle to it? Is it nearly vertical? And you do that 7 times, and then near the end, there's another selection where they do preset this for you based on your results, but you can still adjust that if you want to. So it shows you know, 2 speakers where it's like, you know, pick the one that sounds the most, again, level, you know, where you think it's coming from, what's the most accurate there. And yeah, it's a very thorough setup. It is something where you almost question yourself because it's like, is it the setup wizard doing this or is it me, right? Because that's the one caveat with 3D audio. You don't necessarily know how you're supposed to be interpreting audio compared to others, I guess. But it's so weird for me going through the audio setup, and I'm like, why is it a matter of like the portion where it's the audio from left to right? Almost always for me, it was extremely level. It was never like offset. Only a few times I'm like, maybe it sounds a little bit offset. Maybe it's going from like slightly lower to slightly upper when it does the swoosh thing, but I never got a scenario where it was like vertical or nearly vertical. It's an option. You would think they would play that so they can determine exactly how you're hearing that sound, but it never came up for me. Same for the individual sound bites. That did have some variance, but not a whole lot, and you have to run through this a few times if you don't notice that. You can actually move that completely up front or behind you as well, so it's not nearly as obvious for moving that cursor around, but you can swing it all the way around the 360 view, so that's important to note when it comes to if you think the sound is coming from behind you or in front of you. But either way, I've got my audio profile set up, and I'm going to try out a number of experiences and toggle this on and off just to see if I can pick up on how much better or not it sounds. Yeah, there's a difference. I wish I could do it faster, right? Going from settings and thumbing down to turn off the personalized profile. I wish I could do it faster. It does seem different. It's more impactful in a way. It's almost like it's louder, but like louder in a way where it's, you know, just a better sense of locality and presence, but it's ever so slight. But it's there. I didn't think honestly, I didn't think I'd be able to tell the difference. I know I always use like Demon's Souls or a handful of these games over and over again, but considering I've tried these games out so many times now with 3D audio that I have a good idea of what they've always sounded like, and I don't want to say it's a placebo. It does sound a lot more haunting than usual. It's there. It's there for Demon's Souls, 100%. I don't know if I wouldn't say it's a big difference, but there's a difference, which I genuinely did not think I'd be able to pick up on that. So Returnal's another good one. I know I use this game all the time for videos, but it's got so many ambient noises with the rain and the co-op sphere over here and the little bugs and fauna flying about. It's a very audio-heavy game, I would argue. So this one, I'm curious if I can pick up on a difference. This I can't tell a difference. If there is a difference, I think it's very subtle. I almost want to say it's the same thing as Demon's Souls. It sounds slightly louder, which louder doesn't always equate to like better sounding or like there's a better sense of presence and locality. Maybe it's just because Returnal has way too many things going on, right? There's a lot of ambient noise happening in Returnal, but it doesn't sound that significant of a difference to me. See, now what I'm also not entirely sure of is that when you turn off the personalized 3D audio, if it defaults to your old 3D audio profile, which is the basic preset, I would assume that's what's happening. We don't want to just do a blanket on-off switch for 3D audio, period, because the difference there is a lot more noticeable. In fact, Sony has that right there in settings where you can listen and compare to 3D audio versus stereo. That's a great way to like determine immediately if you can tell if 3D audio is a lot, different for you, which in my case it is. I mean, there's a huge difference between these two, but turning off the toggle for personalized 3D audio is what I'm curious about, because in the case of Spider-Man 2, this one is like identical to me. This sounds exactly the same for what is like, standing in the middle of Times Square with all this ambient noise going on. Having like conversations walk by you and things like that, right? I think this is another great example to test out. My back and forth, there's like no difference to me.
Here we go.
Gosh! How did I forget that? I've played this game so many times. I thought this was the perfect area to test 3D audio. How did I forget that? That was real. That was real. That scared the shit out of me. Well, it sounded good, for what it's worth. I can hear another one. I can hear another one. I don't remember 2 coming. I thought you had to start the generator before they all show up. What is going on? Alright, it sounds... Okay. It got me again, but like... I don't know. So, sound-wise, I mean, it doesn't sound that much different. If anything, it seems like the... I want to say it's louder again compared to the standard audio profile. That's what I want to say. Which in this case, I guess makes it more spooky because like everything is very quiet up until the stalkers show up. So okay, yeah, I want to say it's the same thing. Definitely like the ceiling of volume is a bit higher. And it's just like like SFX period is like a little bit louder, and I guess that helps with the presence and locality being more pronounced than usual. Maybe it's not so much ambient noises that stick out, but when things are yelling at you and there's directionality involved, which it's always going to be in play, obviously. This was spooky. The basement area hit a lot harder than it used to. I'll say that much. Alright, I think that about wraps up this little experiment. The funny thing is, I've had this turned on since the beta went live about 2 weeks ago now at this point. Like, I set up a profile, been playing games for 2 weeks now on this, And it's just something where, like, I want to make sure it's not a placebo effect, because obviously it does sound good, but, like, how much better? So in this case, with the back and forth switching right then and there, it seems like the mileage is going to vary a lot. It's weird, like, Demon Souls immediately was like, oh yeah, that's different enough. And then everything else was, I think, a lot more subtle. But that's kind of what Sony was always getting at with the whole HRTF profiles, and how some people can fall on the spectrum of, you know, being a fringe case. So the mileage is probably always going to vary when it comes to something like this, because I've seen some people say, like, you know, this was a game-changing feature for me with this recent beta. So perhaps it will be a much bigger difference compared to my experience, but at least it's here now, and it's also something where you don't have to take a picture of your ear and send it into Sony. That would have been a bit strange, but either way, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. You take it easy.